Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 882 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today on the podcast, I'm speaking with Malia. She is the mother of two children who have type 1 diabetes. Both were diagnosed when they were young and are like pre-teeny age, just starting their teen years right now. While you're listening, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. If you have type 1 diabetes, are the caregiver of someone with type 1, and are a U.S. resident, please go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and fill out the survey. Completing that survey helps to move diabetes research forward. You can help somebody, help yourself, help the show, all in fewer than 10 minutes at t1dexchange.org/juicebox. And you can save 10% on your first month of therapy with BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/juicebox. Save 10% on your first month when you go through that link. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Cozy Earth. That's CozyEarth.com, where I got the sweatshirt I wore yesterday, the sheets I slept on last night, and I got some towels coming too. They make terrific stuff. And if you use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout at CozyEarth.com, you will save 35% site-wide. That's 35% with the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout, CozyEarth.com. If you're looking to start with AG1 from Athletic Greens, my link, athleticgreens.com/juicebox, will get you going. And you'll also get a free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first order. Fill nutrition gaps, promote gut health, and support whole body vitality with AG1. athleticgreens.com/juicebox.
My name is Malia. I have two children with type 1, Sophia and Wyatt. Of course, she just goes by Sophie. Currently, they are 13 and 14 years old, but they were diagnosed at 5 and 8.
Okay, Sophia's 13?
She's 14, actually. 14. She's the older
Wyatt's
of the
13. Two. How old was Sophia when she was diagnosed?
She had just turned 8. So they're about 16 months apart. And he was first, actually. He was 5 years old when he was diagnosed. Was
that completely a surprise, or are you like, oh no, everybody in our family gets diabetes?
No, we have no family history. He was first. So when he was 5 years old, we had gone to Disney World. And, it's funny because I do listen to your podcast. I feel like our story is probably not super unique in that sense. Like, we noticed all of the classic signs. He was, wetting the bed every single night. And since we were on vacation, we were spending 24/7 with each other, and probably noticed it a little bit more than I would have even at home, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. We were going to like the 20-minute Disney shows, and I would take him to the bathroom before, and he would still have an accident. So actually on our way home, my husband's college friend is a nephrologist. And so he just was like, and they're still close. And he said, what do you think? And he never mentioned diabetes. He never said that. He just said, I think I would have that, checked out. So we went to our pediatrician, and she told us on the spot, his blood sugar was about 380, I think. And where we were unique, which I found this, at the beginning, we didn't know anything.
Sure,
So we didn't know this was unusual. But after talking to families that we connected with later, they were like, oh, I've never heard this. But we were sent home that day. We did not go to the hospital. So looking back on it, it was a little less traumatic, I think, in that moment. But, as a parents, we went home and started looking at things. And so we were terrified, and we were just sent home.
So when they tell you, in that situation, they tell you diabetes, and you have an answer, so you're probably like, well, at least we know what's going on. And then when they send you home, it probably doesn't seem that much of a big deal. Is that the idea?
Well, no, we didn't know enough to take care of him. That's what I would say. But we knew enough to be terrified. That's where we were. So they just sent us home, and I was in tears and in denial. Like immediately, all the all the different stages of grief, I guess, started to happen. Mm-hmm. And we were going back. So they sent us to an endocrinologist the next morning. And we were just going back daily. Like we didn't spend any time in the hospital. So we were just going back each day for education and, what do we do? And so like, I literally was going through all the stages. Like at that point I was in denial because I kept thinking we're going to go back today and they're going to tell us there was some kind of mistake,
Right.
And, which is so ridiculous to think about now, but I really thought that, we don't have a family history of any kind. And so I thought this is probably just, there's probably a mistake. And I kept hoping for that. It wasn't the case, of course.
Right. How was your husband dealing with it in that moment?
So it's really funny. And this is the part where we always say, this is such a personal thing, but we are like, we talk to a lot of, type 1 families now. And I mentored families through JDRF. I did that for a little while. And we always were like, okay, it's better if we're just honest about it, how it affected us differently.
Right.
Because I think it helps people feel better. It's kind of painful to say that I was like, I went through 2 weeks where I really was in a state of depression, and it's hard to say because you think I had another child that I needed to also just put it in gear for, Mm-hmm. But he really did. He kicked it in gear and he was like, and he's Mr. like, let's fix it. There's a problem. Let's figure it out. So he was taking care of me too. So it was really probably a lot for him.
Yeah.
In those first few weeks.
I hear that. Oh my goodness. I wonder if everybody gets a chance to look back on it like that and just take a minute to sort of diagnose what happened in the second. Cause it's very interesting. It's like you're feeling depressed and you kind of probably turtled up a little bit. And then he looks up, the kid's got diabetes. There's another kid and you're like, I'm out.
Yeah. Yes.
He's probably just like, oh my gosh. Did you ever talk about it with him afterwards?
Oh yes, we did. We've talked about it many times. I can remember this, this was years ago, but I can remember sitting in the kitchen and him asking me when the last time I ate was. Mm-hmm. And then looking back, I thought this is really unfair to my husband because he's, learning a completely new, this chronic disease that he's got to take care of, that he's handling. And then another kid who's still very young, she was young at the time. It's not like we can tell her just to hang tight, Yeah. And then me, that he's having to ask if I ate today.
How long, or I guess you said a couple of weeks, but what do you think brought you around?
It's really just my personality to I kind of look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, okay, you need to get it together today, But my mother-in-law, I went over to her house and she came outside and met me on the porch and she said, hey, it's time to get it together. And it really kind of made me realize that, she was right. And that's my personality too, is like, okay, it's time to step it into gear and deal with what we have to deal with.
Malia, I didn't like you for my son, and don't prove me right here, okay? Let's get going. Well, that's lovely of her. She's probably been through some things that she knows how it all works, and when you got to steal up a little bit and even when you don't feel like you can do it.
Yeah, I think she also knows my personality and knew that would be a good, okay, your time is done.
Get you going, yeah. So was your husband way ahead of you when you came online, or a couple weeks? You probably didn't know very much, I guess.
Yeah, it was no kidding. I think probably for what anybody would say, what unless you're in the medical world, maybe, right? Or have a history, you probably don't know a lot anyway. I was showing up to everything. I did feel like I was in a fog, the entire time that I was learning things, but, no, I think I was staying focused on how to be a good caregiver. It's just, I just was pretty much denying that it was happening. But We kind of had the reverse roles when my daughter was diagnosed because it was about 14 months later. And so he was at a work dinner, and I had taken them shopping. And so she kept doing the same thing. Like, I have to go to the bathroom. I have to go to the bathroom. And it was very unusual for her. And so I just brought her home and used his meter and did a finger stick, and she was like 500. And so I called him and I told him what was going on. And he said, that's impossible. Not that he didn't say that's impossible, but he was like, there's no way.
Right.
Do it again. And I said, I've done it 3 times. You should just come home. So
he's like, I'm not coming home. Actually, I'm leaving. I can't. You were with them when it happened. It's your problem now. I gotta go. This is terrible. Oh my gosh. In that like shopping trip, when she's going to the bathroom, right away you're like, oh my God, Sophie has diabetes too. Do you think it right away?
it was my first thought to, of course, test her. I mean, we left the store early, and I was like, I didn't want to be there doing it. And so we left because I was like, this is the first thing I'm going to do. But I'm going to be honest with you. When I saw that number pop on the meter, I thought, no way. Yeah. There's got to be something on her hands, like, I mean, not that that would make it 5. I thought this can't be happening.
No, it seems impossible to me. I mean, I don't even know what to relate it to. Like you I don't know. You get a scratcher with your coffee and you win, and the next week it happens again, and you're like, get out of here. Like this stuff doesn't happen twice to people. It just and so close together too.
Yes.
Time wise.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we were super shocked.
What
we
happened?
Really were.
Did you go through similar situations the second time? Like, was he like, don't worry, it's fine? Or did it turn into like, he was like, I'm out of this, is killing me. And you were like, don't worry, I have it. Like, who? Yeah.
So we had the reverse roles this time around. Mm-hmm. So we talked about this later, much later, right? Because, sometimes when you're in the moment of drowning, that's all you're doing is drowning. You're not really focusing on anything else. But I did have kind of the reverse on that one. So I was like, we can do this. It's, we know what we're doing, right? Like, we know what we're doing. We're fine. Let's just move on. Not fine, but
right. It
was still certainly a sting. But, and he did too. I mean, he sees problems ahead, and it's like, let's just fix it. But about a year after her diagnosis, we realized that we hadn't done much other than talk about diabetes. We hadn't gone on a date with each other. We had, we were just like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Well, it's constant. It really is. Did Wyatt have any technology by then? Was he using a pump or CGM or anything by the time Sophie was diagnosed?
No. And so I never want to make it sound like here's how I'll put it. The endocrinologist that we were sent to was not very progressive. Mm-hmm. And remember, that was several years ago too, but the CGM was there, the pump was there, and we were not doing any of that. So I would ask her about it constantly. And she would say, well, you still have to do finger sticks. You were calibrating twice a day, I think, at that time. And I said, yeah, I know, but that's better than, 10 or 12. And I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't, my health was probably if I kept that up, it was going to kill me. Yeah. And so I would ask about all those things, and we weren't getting it. So
let me jump in. Did that endo have diabetes?
No.
Interesting. Because you have to finger stick anyway back when you had to calibrate your CGM a couple of times a day. That's such an old head type 1 answer about that. Because
I can see that,
and it's like, because I think, based on conversations I've had, my expectation is that back then, when CGMs required a couple of calibrations a day, people who were testing all the time anyway were like, well, listen, if it's not going to stop me from testing, then I don't care. I think they saw it as a blood glucose meter replacement, and they weren't imagining all the benefits of seeing the speed and direction of the blood sugar at that time. So that was a really common answer back there. It's what made me ask. So, okay. So you're not sleeping. Things are going downhill quickly. Endo won't give you anything to help. When do you think, well, let me ask you this. Did the kids have, I'm assuming they did, but how did they have different reactions? Like what sticks out in your head about Wyatt's reaction at 5 years old versus Sophie's reaction at 8 years old?
So he doesn't, I mean, this, even though he was 5, this is the only life he remembers. He doesn't think about life before diabetes. And at 5, I'll tell you, thinking back on some of the things that he said to me at 5 years old, and I'll never forget them. It broke my heart. We did adjust his diet immediately, and we did all these things. And of course he's doing all these finger sticks a day and his fingers hurt. And I can remember him at 5. And of course he just, he looked just like a baby. He still had all the, big cheeks and, and, I can remember him waking up in the middle of the night and his stomach was upset. So he's like, sitting in the bathroom and I'm sitting there with him on the floor. And he says, "Mommy, my fingers hurt." And I have his hands wrapped up in a wet washcloth while he's in the bathroom with a stomach ache. And he just looked at me and said, "Well, when is this going to end?" Oh. And that was heartbreaking.
Yeah. Jeez. It make me cry.
Yeah, it was, and he would try to put it with an age. He would say, "Well, when I'm your age or when I'm Papa's age." Mm-hmm. So it was hard. He got past it, pretty quickly. For her, when she saw that number on the meter, she just immediately bawled. She knew what it meant.
Right. Yeah. Way different context at that point. She's seen him live with it for, what'd you say, 16 months?
It was about 14 months.
14 months at that point. So she saw the shots and the testing and low blood sugars and you looking frazzled from a distance and all that stuff. And then it was on her too. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just logged on to CozyEarth.com and immediately it just says here, "Hey, if you give us your email address, we'll give you a $50 credit." So that seems like an easy way to get $50. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here to tell you that you will save site-wide 35% on your order when you use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout at CozyEarth.com. Cozy Earth features, honestly, the most comfortable bed sheets that you've ever slept on, at least the ones I've ever slept on. If you slept on more comfortable sheets than this, you're living better than I am. The sheets are soft and they body temperature, I don't know how to put it. Like, I'm never hot or cold in the sheets. I almost cursed. They're fantastic. And I cannot stress enough that the joggers from Cozy Earth, they're in full rotation in my drawer. Do you understand? I'm wearing those things every time they're clean. I wear them. Do I stretch it out a little bit? Maybe a little bit. Then right little laundry. And then boom, I'm right back into them again. They call your name. They're just like, "Scott, I'm so soft and I'm so comfortable. Put me on." And I listen. CozyEarth.com. Bedding, bath towels, stuff for women and men. You should go. Like, just head over. Got 5 years in a row, they've had something on Oprah's favorite things list. 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22. And by the way, never the same thing twice. Waffle bath towels, plush lounge socks, bamboo jogger pant, bamboo pajama set, bamboo sheet set. Oh, that's right. Viscose bamboo. That's what my sheets are made out of. Comfy. You just go look for great colors, great selection, great style, great comfort, great satisfaction. CozyEarth.com/juicebox. Save 35% on everything you put in your cart at checkout with the offer code JUICEBOX. There are links in the show notes of your podcast player and links at juiceboxpodcast.com to Cozy Earth, Athletic Greens, T1D Exchange, all of the sponsors and the places that we support. When you click on my links, you are supporting the show. Just like when you use Juicebox at checkout at Cozy Earth. It's all supporting the podcast. How are they today?
Good. They're good. We're in the teenage years, and I could use your advice.
I don't know. I got kids. Nothing goes right for me either. But go ahead. What do you got?
She does pretty good in the sense of neither of them are rebellious about it. I mean, at this point, knock on wood, they're not like just angry about it. There's none of that. They have not hit the, like, I don't want to tell anybody or, just none of that. But to be honest with you, and we, my husband and I just say it, like, our son, his A1C was not great last time. And we were very upset. Like, he and I were, just because we think about long term, and he's 13 and he's just living a day, day to day. And to be honest with you, a lot of his is just like, oh, I ate and I forgot to bolus for any of the food that I just ate. And so then we're just fighting the highs and trying to attack those. And so we've battled that for about a year with him.
Okay. And so what happens there? You obviously you sit and you explain it to him, even though you're like, I know he knows this, but let me just say it again. And then he just doesn't do it. So is it willful? Is it he's busy? What do you think? Do you have any kind of thoughts about that?
I think he's just kind of being lazy about it. He's just busy. He just doesn't want to take the time to do it. And I think a lot of 13-year-olds, so I'm dealing with tube type 1. So it's really funny looking at that, because so many families that I know, every family that I know is just one. And so you're trying to take their personality and work with that, like knowing what you know about their personality. How can I make this make sense to them or make them want to do it?
Yeah.
And I'm having to battle two very different personalities. So I think that, my husband and I, we have to be kind of delicate about how we approach each kid with it. Like how do we make this make sense, right, and not terrify them? But, I think maybe we even use that tactic at some point.
I think there's that saying that's escaping me right now, but the sentiment of it is, as a parent, if you do everything that you see as well as you can, and even let's just say you do it really well, you do it right, there'll just be something else later that they're like, oh, but you didn't do this. So it feels like is thankless the right word, being someone's parent? Maybe thankless is the right word.
That is true.
Yeah. And you just can't, no matter what. I think people go through stages, and I don't know that you can stop them from doing it. I was saying this to Kelly, I think recently, where, let's see if I can put my thought together around this. I see it happened to us, and I see it happen to other people all the time, right? Your kids are diagnosed with diabetes. It's a good example because, the theme of the podcast and all. But this happens with other stuff. So you get diagnosed with diabetes, and your first thought is, I'm going to create a life for my kid that is normal. Like, I'm going to shoot for normal. And that's not really, I don't want to be a bummer, Malia, but that's hard to get hit. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
Absolutely normal. You can hit it in places like, oh, my kid doesn't think about it very often, which is great. It hits them once in a while, but not every day. Or, they, for the most part, take care of themselves and don't ignore things. But Arden's been on the podcast. You heard her. Like, there's things she doesn't do that she's supposed to do that I make up for, Kelly makes up for. You say it doesn't affect the other person, the other kid, but it does. Like, there's no way around it. I think I'm a person, for example, who has split their time between their two children as well as possible. And I'm sure it didn't do what I thought it was going to do. Right. Like, because no matter what, Arden looks like she's getting more attention, no matter what. So this normal, or this perfection that everybody's shooting for, I don't think it exists. And I actually don't think it would have existed without diabetes either. In our example, I just think that diabetes speeds it up so quickly. Like, you have something to blame. You know what I mean? Like, you have context all of a sudden. Like, I don't know. It's anything. Gaining weight, getting sick. It happens so slowly, you don't notice it happening. And so it can kind of overtake you bit by bit. But when diabetes comes, it comes in a wash, and you can't ignore that this seems like the reason why everything is the way it is. So I'm going to guess that without diabetes, Wyatt would just not be doing something else he's supposed to be doing when he's 13.
Of course.
And probably isn't doing that thing either, by the way. Whatever it is. But then we point it back at the diabetes, and we're like, well, see, if they didn't have to go through this, then this wouldn't be happening, and I wouldn't be upset about it. And but I think the real end of the story is what you said earlier, which is my husband and I are upset when he doesn't bolus because we think about long-term issues. But that's really what we're all worried about. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Low blood sugars today, long-term issues later.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do you, as a parent, gracefully manipulate the way people are so that they're more on the side of themselves succeeding and less on the side of themselves failing? And I don't know how to do that. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean?
I keep thinking, especially listening to this podcast, and I listen to people who've been on the podcast before who are 30 years in, as adults, I guess, that say, oh yeah, I was there. And it just took growing up. It just took me some time. And it's sort of like, this is the way I think of it. It doesn't make it easier in the moment, but I think about, let's just say like an addict or anything really. It's just like, I had to be there. 10 people who loved me could be standing over me saying, this is the best thing for you. But until I was ready to do it, it wasn't going to happen.
Talk about how frustrating that is.
It's very frustrating.
Yeah.
But of course, as with diabetes, what we do is we of course fill in the gaps, like you said. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say this to my kids. That's exhausting for a parent, to do, and you're doing full-time jobs and, taking care of the other child and running them to practices and doing all the things. And so my husband and I say to them all the time, if we could just get a little help, that would be great.
Yeah. Oh, wait until they're like, 10 years older, 20 years older, and you're having a thoughtful conversation one day and you're thinking, oh, it all worked out. Like the kids' blood sugars are still pretty good as adults and they seem like they're doing okay. And they turn to you and say, you didn't do enough. Here's where you let me down. You're like, oh,
you let me down.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'll tell you, of all the things that aren't fair, and of course that list is very long, but one of them is it's so frustrating to be there and be willing, and not just be willing, but be excited to help somebody and have them just completely ignore it because they don't have the same perspective as you do. So mm-hmm. Everything you say to them seems ridiculous. Hence the old, like, you'll see one day, or, what a mom say to daughters, like, I hope you have one just like you, or to sons, like, so you'll learn. And that one day I'm just staying alive long enough for you to come find me and apologize. Like, how the hell is that the cycle? You know what I mean? But it's worldwide and it's, I don't know. It's crazy.
It is. I do see, I try to find the silver lining in everything. It doesn't always work, but I do see, especially with Wyatt, that he's more empathetic with people. So, and my husband have said that. We thought, this is actually a gift maybe that he got from that. Like he does recognize probably over, when most kids wouldn't, somebody in a tough situation. So I don't know if that's because of what all he's been through, but there is that.
Malia, that the testosterone is going to hit him pretty hard pretty soon. He's going to start stepping over babies to get to video games. Be like, I don't care about anything. I don't know. I see why, what makes sense, Malia, why sex feels so good, because if it didn't, why would anyone make a baby? It's the trick to get you to do it again.
The trick. Yeah. It is the trick. You're right.
Yeah. That's the thing that's trick. You're being tricked by your genitals, Malia, into making a little person who will not listen to anything that you've learned. and when you're young and a parent, you're like, you know how it goes, right? Like, we all think that our parents were terrible and we figured something out. And I think for the most part, the part of that that's true is that your parents start somewhere, they ascend as far as they can, and then you, based on what you've learned, what you've seen, try to ascend a little farther, right? In understanding and knowledge or whatever, and how you love, whatever. So you ascend a little farther, and then you're like, I did it, I won, I'm the best I've ever been. Like, I saw my grandmother. She didn't give a care about anybody else. My mom and dad, I'm clearly better than them. Obviously, they didn't try. I'm trying, all the stuff that you fill your head with when you're young. And then you lay it out for your kid and you're just like, hey, here it is. Like, you're lucky because I've culled the genius of the world. It's all right here for you. And they're like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're old. And you're like,
Yes.
oh,
Yeah, we get that.
okay, great. And you just realize like this is the cycle, but there's no payoff. Malia,
There's not.
Are you here?
There's not.
No, Malia, there's literally no payoff. I assume, I don't mean to make light of this, and I'm not, but this is what rolls in the back of my head. I figure that I will get everybody somewhere comfortable, and I'll take one breath and start thinking about what I'm going to do for myself, and like a mountain's going to fall on me.
I know, right?
You know, and I'm just going to be like, oh, and I'm going to have enough time to look up and go, oh, look, landslide. Nah, okay. And then it's going to be over. Or I'm going to like get to that point and my body's going to break on me. And I'm just going to be stuck in a chair going, this is what I did. This is what I did with my life.
This is my payoff.
So the point is, for me, then we're going to find out what the point is from you, is I just treat life in this regard. I mean, almost the way I treat diabetes or the podcast or anything, right? Like I put my best into it and I hope that it pays back. And if it doesn't, at least I didn't waste my time. I did my part is the way I end up feeling about it. And, you know, I try to listen to the people who listen to the podcast, or, you know, see what they need. I listen to my kids. I think I'm doing what they need. But the truth is that no matter what I do, someone's going to be disappointed and you're just not going to, I don't know. This is such a bummer, Malia. Why did you come on and make me feel like a bummer today?
I'm sorry.
All right, here's the message. You can't win, give up. Just no.
You can't win, give up.
But that's not true though. Like, because it's bigger picture than that, because your kid is going to ascend a little above you and it's going to keep happening. You have to care about generations that you're not going to meet to be a good parent, really.
Do you know our motto in this home, like we talk, because, you know, as you have teenagers, right? So you just constantly feel like you're just like, do this, do that. Did you do this? Did you do that? And so, you know, when they look at you with that kind of crazy look, and I said, what have I always said to you? Like, who do I want you to be? And they're like, you just want to raise a good human being. So I'm like, look, that's just my total end goal. I just want to raise a good person.
Oh,
you know, past that, I'm going to fail at a lot of things.
Yep. And this is it. And it's not even failure, by the way. I mean, I don't listen, you guys know me pretty well from listening to the podcast. Like, I put a ton of effort into my family, and still, like, it's not like when I get done here, the house turns black and white. And it's like, leave it to Beaver. You know what I mean? Like I have all the same problems everybody else has.
Sure.
You know, and the only thing that I can model for people listening is do the right thing, be consistent about it, do it for the right reasons. And if you're lucky, things will break your way sometimes. Like, I don't know, like if you're looking for perfection, I certainly don't have the answer to that. But nobody else does either. But
of course not. Yeah, I gave up on that a long time ago.
Good for you. Look at you, Malia. That's perfect. Let's not like go the whole way. You know what I mean? I don't want you mainlining during the day and stuff like that. But you almost, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, because you can almost see how it happens to people, like big addictions and escapism and things like that. Like you see why. I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel okay today, but I don't know how I'll feel next week or what's going to happen, or, you know, when I'm going to fall apart, if I'm going to fall apart, if I'm not. I mean, Arden's blood sugar got low overnight last night. I don't even know how. Dexcom alarmed, got right up, went into her, boom, boom, boom. She's fine in a couple of minutes. We're back at it. But we're 6 weeks away from her going to college. Actually, I'm looking at my calendar. We're 5 weeks away from her going to college.
Wow.
So what am I going to do when she gets low 5 weeks from now? Because she will.
Right.
A call on the phone. Like, you know, she's going to be 13 hours by car away with, you know, a few girls she met online so far.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Is that the thing that's going to break me, Malia? Like, you know?
I met a family through JDRF, and it's kind of funny how we got connected with JDRF, but I met a family, and his daughter was away at college. And I said, oh, our kids were, 6 and 7 maybe at that time. And he said, I was always very nervous about her going to college. And so he said, this was, we had a plan. And I said, oh, well, what was your plan? And he said, well, I told her that if she got low in the middle of the night and I called her 3 times in a row and she didn't answer, my next call was going to be to the police department, and they were going to bust her door down. So he was like, we have an understanding. I was like, oh, that's your plan.
Well, see, that's a nice plan, except I walked into Arden's room and I was like, Arden, 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 Arden. She doesn't hear him. Like, she's asleep.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to do. To be perfectly honest with you, I looked back. I didn't hear it for the first 15 minutes. Like, I looked at when she got low and when the alarm started, and it took me 15 minutes to wake up. Mm-hmm. And my blood sugar wasn't low. I'm just old and useless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The same thing happened to me last night. Wyatt dropped to 50, and the alarm had been going off, and I didn't wake up until, it did. Mm-hmm. Until I did. And then I thought, how long did I lay here before?
Yeah, all this happened. Do you ever have a low blood sugar for a kid and fix it and then think to yourself, common sense tells me to look at the other one, but I'm just going to hope, and then crawl back in bed and somebody else gets low or high or something like that?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And I cannot tell you how many times that I have fixed a low, got back into bed, and I'm just exhausted. And it's one of those feelings where I think, as soon as I hit this bed, I'm going to fall back to sleep. But then I think to myself, is that going to work? Is that juice going to work? Or, hey, I didn't look at, Sophie's number. And so I lay there for a second, and then I think to myself, you have to look, or you have to stay up and wait 15 minutes.
I did that last night.
So it happens to me all the time.
Yeah, I did it last night because the juice caught it, but I was like, Arden, it's caught. It'll be okay. And I went back to bed, and like 2 minutes later, she texted. She's like, I need something to eat. I can feel this. And I was like, okay. So I came into her room, and she's like, I think I gave her 3 gummy bears and a cookie. And she's eating the cookie. She goes, this is the best cookie I've ever had in my life. And she wasn't kidding. And so I said, well, I'm glad. And then I just, like the way Arden's room is set up, I'm now standing there. I have a t-shirt on. I'm in my underwear. The air conditioner, and I don't want to complain about having air conditioning, but was blowing at me. There was nowhere for me to go. And I thought, well, I'm not going to leave until this thing registers 2 checks. So for 10 minutes at 3:30 in the morning, I was scrolling the news, freezing, and rubbing Arden's back at the same time. She's like, hey, rub my back while you're here. I was like, okay, great. So I'm doing all that. By the way, this is long past me remembering how good it felt having sex to make Arden. So that's way gone.
Yeah, that's out the window.
Yeah, way gone now. And like, so there's nothing to lean on really, except I like her. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay. And I get back in bed, and Kelly says, how are we going to send her to college? And I was like, oh, that's usually my line. Like, that's usually something I say after stuff like this, And I was like, oh God, now she's thinking about it. Great. Like, okay. So I don't know what the answer is going to be. I have no idea. I can tell you, I looked at the low blood sugar. I can't believe she got low. So, I mean, it was 3 hours after a bolus. And I was just like, it was one of those things that I would have bet against. And then there it was anyway. So I don't know.
I have a question for you, just in thinking about all of that. Mm-hmm. When she goes away, do you think that you will be less bold with insulin? Like during those nighttime hours, you would make some adjustments just to make you guys feel better or see how it goes? Or
listen, I'm very close to telling her that she can't eat after 9 p.m. like a freaking gremlin or whatever that movie was.
Yes, the Gremlins.
I know it was midnight, but I'm going to change it for my movie. Can't feed it after 9 o'clock. So, I mean, really, this is the thing you're guarding against, right? Is like a low when you're really asleep. Mm-hmm. So she came home last night from a what? It was like a graduation party. These kids are just all collecting money off of each other at this point because they graduated from high school. She comes home. There's a little bit of swimming, but not a lot. Her blood sugar was fine throughout the evening. I thought she did a good job with the bolus she made while she was at the party. She gets home, I don't know if it's like 11 o'clock. Her blood sugar's a little high. It's like 145 or something like that. She's like, hey, I'm going to pre-bolus this and have some chocolate covered pretzels. And I was like, okay. So she did. She bolused. She got in the shower. She got out of the shower. She created a fall like she wanted. She ate her pretzels. She leveled right out. And 3 hours later, her blood sugar started falling. So, I don't know. You know what I mean? I mean, I guess I could move with her, but that seems cliched.
Well, I think I've heard you say before, everybody's done this thing before. I think we've struggled with school. Things are going at school. And I listened to one where there was a mom teacher on there. And then you made the comment, hey, everybody's done this before. We're all going to be good, right?
Yeah. Well, that's just me being positive and doing the right thing. I mean, you guys, like, you hear the podcast, right? Like, you know what I'm really doing sometimes. Like, look, just hope for the best. Point yourself in the good direction and hope for your best. I mean, look, I don't know what to say. Most days, most hours, even most nights, it's not a problem. And then until it is. Have your kids ever had seizures?
No.
Have you ever come close?
No.
Never been in a situation where you're like, oh, this is tilting the wrong way.
No.
But their A1Cs are higher, you were saying.
They really are. Yeah, we've got to get them down. Okay.
So you're trading the one thing for the other thing.
We are.
Yeah.
Sure.
Great. I don't know what to say. This is the episode where I come out and tell everybody, I don't know.
Just give up. No.
Just give up. No, I mean, I don't know. We're trying to be honest, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah. It's, I mean, you do your best, and it starts with understanding diabetes. It starts with understanding how insulin works so you can make the best decisions you can. And from there, you march on forward and hope the variables don't conspire against you. It's pretty much it, right? And if they do, you stand up and pull out the tools that I gave you and beat them back and get level and start over again. Like, it's not fair. It's just what it is. So, but if it wasn't this, it'd be something else. So that's always
right. That is right. I do think it's funny though, when in listening to these podcasts and then us having this conversation, even our grandparents who want to be so involved with their care and obviously want to be tremendous, great caregivers, really don't even have an understanding of what this life is like. It's just, and they want to, and they still can't, they still don't really even fully understand it. So I think that there's just so much involved. And I think that most people would not know that.
Oh, down to little things. Like, I don't drink to begin with, but if I did, how would I do that? Like, how would I be, like, how could I don't know, have a couple at the end of the night and fall asleep in a way that you're not going to wake up till the morning? I can't do that, can I? I mean, how do you do any of it? Like, and they would never, one generation back, they would never think of that. They would have no reason to. And if they had diabetes a generation back, even if you had diabetes as a kid, Malia, how old are you?
I'm 41.
Okay. Even if you had diabetes as a kid, it would have been a different situation.
Of course. Yeah.
So they're mostly, they still wouldn't know. I mean, that's unfair. I guess they would have more of an idea. They'd see lows and things like that. But not those kind of like crazy, you used to be 110 20 minutes ago and now you're 50 lows. Like that insulin, for the most part, I guess, unless you forgot to eat, didn't work that way. But I'm just saying, like, it was a different world. And I take your point that there's no way they would know. So, well, why did you want to come on the podcast? It wasn't to bum me out. I know that. Mission accomplished anyway, Malia. So, here's what you wrote. Ready? Preteen teen struggles with type 1, issues at school, and struggles for yourself as a parent. Right?
That does sound like a bummer. All of that sounds very, very...
Okay, you didn't write anything in here about the flowers blooming or me staying alive to see the next, Marvel movie or anything like that. This is all just bummers. So, I mean, I think we've gone through with your son. He doesn't bolus. That's great. What does your daughter do that's a struggle?
She does pretty good with, so she has a little bit more of the thinking of long term. So she does try to make, she'll tell us, hey, I pre-bolus, this is what I'm doing. She, on the other hand, is just super forgetful. So we might, make it out the door and we're like, hey, do you have everything that you need? Oh, yes, I do. And then we get to a restaurant or whatever, and we have to turn around and come back home. We've done that many times. So, but she really does think about more of the long term. So their personalities are super different in that regard. He's just living in the moment, and she's a planner for the future, but she forgets in the moment.
Okay. So, and why it doesn't think why he doesn't think about the moment either.
And then he kind of does, like, it's funny because he doesn't think long term, right?
Right.
Also, I guess in the moment if he's not pre-bolusing, but like when we get to a restaurant and she's forgotten her stuff, he's like looking at her like, are you serious?
Oh my God.
Almost like he's so perfect. And so we look at each other, my husband and I do, and we're like, okay, don't forget you made this mistake yesterday.
Oh, Malia, listen, this is going to sound harsh. If my children ever hear this, I apologize. But what are you hearing when you're talking? Go ahead, say it. You shouldn't have had kids. And not because of the diabetes, just all of it.
My husband, we went to the lake last weekend and we're sitting on the boat, just, enjoying the day. And the kids were like, I'm bored.
Oh, okay, hold on.
Whatever they're saying. And I look at him and I was like, this was your idea. He was like, this was your idea.
I like that they're bored.
Right.
It's amazing. I don't know about your summer vacation, Malia. I'm about 10 years older than you. I'd wake up in the morning, eat a bowl of cereal, watch television, walk outside, stare at my friends, walk back inside, have a sandwich. It wasn't good, in case you're wondering. It was like fluffy white bread with like 2 pieces of pretend meat in between it and some mustard. And then I'd stare at my friends, stare at the TV, eat some crappy food, get yelled at, go back to bed. Your kids are at a lake going, what's all this?
Yeah, that's what we tell them. And you know what, though? Like when we did that, like we entertained ourselves in the summer. I don't know that we did anything more than that, but I was good with that.
Malia, one summer I taught myself to shoplift because I was so bored. I didn't even want to. I was just like, I need something to do. So
that's amazing.
Hey, you think, you know what? I think that I can't get arrested anymore, right? It's a long time ago.
I don't think so. There's going to be a time limit on that, right?
Yeah. Let's go with that. So there was this, do you remember at one point, like Walkmans, obviously, but do you remember when they put TVs in them?
No.
At one point you could get this little handheld thing it had like a TV tuner in it. It had a little screen. It was like 2 inches by 1 inch and you could watch TV on it. You don't remember that? I don't remember that. I lifted one of those out of a Kmart. I don't know how old I was. It was my shining moment of shoplifting. I don't think I ever did it again after that I can recall. And I don't remember.
And now all the Kmarts are closing. That's probably why.
You think it's me? Do you want to know what tactic I used?
Yeah, I do.
I used, I walked out of there like I owned the place. Like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. So I just did it in full view and just did it. And it just worked. Nowadays, I'm sure there's cameras everywhere and probably not going to get away with that. But back then, I just picked it up and I was like, I'm going to leave with this. And that was my summer. I spent my whole summer watching my stolen television. And I felt really bad about it the entire time.
I was going to ask you how you felt afterwards.
Yeah, horrible, actually. Thank you. It stuck with me for a really long time. I haven't stolen anything since then. Yeah, I just... I took it back to and then you couldn't show it to anybody and I had to hide it and
and it wasn't worth it.
Yeah, it sucked, but it did eat up that summer. Oh my God. Your kids at that lake are pissing me off, just in case you're wondering.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
People are like, why do you like MASH, the television show MASH? And I'm like, well, let me tell you about the 3 months I spent in a room watching it because that was my whole life. Because it was on reruns and we didn't go on vacations or have, money. So I just sat there watching MASH in my formative years. Oh my gosh. Now my kids' lives are like, you should see the stuff arriving here to take to school with Arden. To the point where I said to Kelly, I'm like, how are we going to get this stuff to where we're going even? was like, we only own 2 cars. Like, what do you know, drop ship it from a parachute? Like, what's the plan here exactly? She needs that. I was like, I'm perfectly sure she doesn't need that. I don't even know what that is. Arden showed me the other
These
day.
kids, they have it so good.
Oh my God. She's like, hey, I got wallpaper from my dorm room. I'm like, I'm sure you didn't. Like, that seems wrong. No, it sticks up and it pulls right down again. It's just for the ball in the back of my bed. And I looked at Kelly. I'm like, what are we doing? I was like, we should be, forget all this stuff. We should be fashioning a pot and pan system that is connected to each other by wire. And when her phone vibrates, it makes the pots clank. Like, that's what we should be focusing on right now. But instead, wallpaper that you can take back down again. So anyway, I hate your kids now for complaining about the lid, Malia.
I know.
Anyway, so regular teen stuff, but it just applies to diabetes. There's nothing special here, right? You're not having any new experiences that you wouldn't have had with regular teens. It's just that they have diabetes. So it comes out
And
there.
I mean, I felt like we were kind of prepped for that, early on in our diagnosis. We were told, hey, the teen years do get difficult. I will tell you, the one thing I wish we had been prepped more for was all of the emotional side of it. We just had to figure that out on our own.
How so?
Well, I guess the diabetes fatigue, that hits everybody, even parents. And, when you're first diagnosed, you're just learning how to keep your kid alive,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all you're focused on. And there's not like your doctor can give you all of the time in the world, right? Like they've all these other patients. So they just need to keep you to, teach you to keep them alive. Right. And then, years into it, there's the emotional side of it. The diabetes fatigue is so real. And, and even as parents, we hit it. And I think sometimes maybe if we had known that was going to hit, maybe that's not true, but if we had known that we would have almost attacked it a little bit better.
Well, the fatigue, you're just talking about like mentally not being prepared for it and physically being exhausted.
Just the mental weight, I think that, the toll that it pulls you down to.
Yeah. Speaking of jealousy, when I see people who just kind of raise their kids, like it's all like kind of laissez-faire, like, oh, it'll be fine. Yeah, I know. We found him in the park drunk. It'll be all right. Like that kind of stuff. And they just let things go. And you realize how much of life doesn't need to be addressed if it's not going to give you a really low blood sugar and kill you, or give you a really high blood sugar and I don't know, cause long-term complications. So the other stuff is you can skip things sometimes. Sure, in a perfect situation, you'd be there to kind of parent through everything. But in a normal situation, there's stuff you can ignore. Like when you're too tired, or when you've just come out of a room having an argument with your spouse that left you thinking why in the hell am I with this person? Instead of having to come out the door and go, oh, did you pre-bolus? When what you want to say is, I'm thinking of leaving. And it's just because 20 years ago, when you're having big existential adult problems and your kid's blood sugar's low, you just throw those things away and you go take care of the low blood sugar. Right? You don't have time to go through your thoughts. Not that you're going to leave, but you don't have time to go through your thoughts. You don't have time to tend to yourself, or the problems you might be having. You just keep pushing them off. And what do you think? You think oh, one day they'll get it old enough, they'll take care of it themselves. And then, yeah, right. And then Malia, you'll be 65. So,
well, speaking of that, and I know it had to have been on one of the early, forever ago podcasts that I listened to, but I think too, knowing in this, so talking about knowing some of the mental stress, right? Is knowing the toll that it's going to take on your marriage. I mean, it's crazy to think back on some of our argument. Everybody argues, right? But to think about some of our arguments, and they've either started because of our stress from, diabetes, or we let it go to a place where we shouldn't have let it go over their blood sugars.
All of my arguments about my kids.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. For us, it's because we both care about them so much.
Of
If
course. But it
one
doesn't
of
feel
us,
like that in the moment.
no, if one of us was just a slacker as a parent, I think it would be fine. I think we'd actually be better off because then one person would just defer to the other person. And instead, we both have pretty strong views about things and we're thinking about them constantly and trying to I don't know, maybe some of that 70s thing where I looked up and realized my mom doesn't even know I'm alive. maybe I would be nice if I had some of that mixed into me, but I don't. So, you're busy trying to help or advise or handle or whatever. And you're doing it for a person who, generally speaking, does not care. They care, but they don't really care. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, it's nice. My mom seems to like me, but they don't see the big picture because how could they? And then, you get together privately. I mean, the last thing that my wife and I argued about that wasn't about what was good for the kids, I don't even know what it is. I couldn't even begin to tell you.
Right.
Maybe we would if we had time.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, you were making a point, and I walked all over you, and now I don't know what your point was.
No, I just think about that. My husband, I think about that often. Just and so after Sophie was diagnosed, we had to it went on for several months where we just probably were just living in this everything diabetes world. I don't know that we talked about anything outside of the kids' blood sugars for several months until we woke up one day and we were like, we can't go on like this.
Yeah. No, it's depressing.
It is.
It really
but
is.
You know what, when we recognized it. And so I think I told you, I mentored a couple of families with JDRF. And I thought that was so important to talk about because, all of us can be just consumed in our kids, right? With everything, even if you don't live in the world of diabetes, but then you throw that in and you got to remember to be good to each other too, Yeah.
No, even other people are consumed with their kids, but not at 3 a.m. usually.
Of course not. Yeah. They actually sleep.
Right. They're like, I don't understand what your problem is. Okay, I'm coming for you too. Just, I arrested people make me upset. It's what? Why do they look like they slept so damn well? They need problems.
I couldn't believe that. So when we first got diagnosed, I think Wyatt, we went probably a year, maybe a year and a half with no CGM. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting on the couch one day. And so I would tell my husband about it. We were so new and we were just going on the advice of our endo, right? We didn't really have any connections, didn't have this podcast. I didn't have anything like that. And so I remember sitting on the couch and I said, I really want to get this. And he was like, well, but they said it's not necessary for us to do right now. And I just started bawling, crying. And I said, I haven't slept in a year and a half. I haven't slept. And so, of course, think about that. You would get up and you would do a finger stick. And if he was 80, and I say he, because we didn't have that diagnosis yet with Sophie, but if the blood sugar was okay, I had no idea which direction it was going to go. And so I would try to lay back down and I would think, well, now what?
Yeah.
And so I was setting alarms. I think it was every 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I just never slept.
Most of the time when you got up and tested again, were you happy that you did? Or were you ever because it's funny, it doesn't matter. If they're low, it's not like you're I was right. And it's, you know what I mean? You're just okay, take care of it. And if they're steady, it's not like you go, well, I guess I can go to sleep now because the next number doesn't tell you much more than the first one did. At least it doesn't
exactly.
It doesn't give you the relief of, I don't know. I guess some people are okay with, can just let it go, but it sounds like you couldn't.
I couldn't. And I think a lot of that was because of just research I had done on my own, because, really in the beginning, we weren't told to even do nighttime finger sticks. I mean, that's just the truth.
Right.
And we just were told to do 4 a day. And I couldn't make sense of that because I was like, if I'm not going 8 or 10 hours during the day without doing it, why would I do that at night? So I just couldn't do it. I couldn't let it go. And I never slept. And after about a year and a half, I ended up begging for the CGM. And then we switched endocrinologists. And as soon as we were there, they said, we should do this. And I was like, yes, thank you. We should.
Yes,
and
we should. They were like, get that lady a CGM. It's not even for the boy. It's for her. Give it to her.
She started it first.
Yeah.
Sophie started it before he did, actually.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
I mean, I take your point about the other thing too. It's I used to say, if it's important to know her blood sugar during the day because I don't want her to get low, why isn't it important at night? And nobody could ever answer the question. And I was like, well, it seems like it is. It seems like the answer was, well, Scott, because humans can't stay up for 24 hours a day. So you're going to have to sleep.
Oh, I did. I did.
I was good at it.
Not really.
No, I was good at it at one point. I didn't have to go to sleep until like, I kept it going for a while. Like I didn't have to go to sleep till 2:30 in the morning. And I could still get up at 6:30. Like I was okay. And then one day, I don't know if I hit a certain age. I don't know what happened. But I remember thinking like, I can't do this anymore. Like I just like can't. So.
Well, long term, that's kind of where I was too. I did it for like a year and a half, whatever that timeline was. And our friends would say, I don't know how you do it. And my response was, I guess my body's gotten used to this. Right. And so even now, almost nightly, I wake up at like 2, 3, and I'll glance at my phone. And I think it was, all those years that I set an alarm. I don't know if my body's used to it or not, but in the beginning, I was just exhausted. And then I got used to it.
I know that is what you tell yourself. I'm used to it now. Like, yeah.
Long term, that's probably not good for us.
No, we'll be dead. Like that'll be it. Yeah.
And our kids will be super ungrateful.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Forget the mountain falling on me. That'll be what happens. Like I'll hear like those old wind up kitchen timers. Like, you know what I mean? Like we used to have them on our stove. Does anybody remember these? The little,
yes.
Yeah, your kitchen timers. Well, yeah, I thought you were like, I don't know what you're talking about, old person.
No, I'm with you.
Okay, so now
the Walkman with the TV, you lost me on that one. But
hey, listen, you weren't technologically forward like I was when I was
I guess not.
So. But I'm thinking now, instead of like everybody's okay and everybody's settled and a mountain falls on me, I'm just going to hear like that timer go off in my chest or something. Like it'll go like ding, 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 ding. And I'm like, oh, good, I'm done. That's it. And the truth is that I don't even know what to do. I brought this up on the show recently, but Kelly has I don't have a real job, but Kelly does, so like we moved our 401k, like she had like 2 of them from 2 companies that she'd worked at for a long time. So we put them together with a person who's managing it. And as the paperwork was being done, the guy says, so what do you want to do when you retire? And I thought, like, I don't know. I have no idea. Like, I couldn't think of anything. I just couldn't think of anything. And I felt ridiculous. So I said something kind of flippant and I was like, oh, I'll get back to you. But I can't even think about myself long enough to imagine what I would do when I would be retired.
Right.
And that's terrible. Like I just was like, I don't know. Like, will the kids need something? Because I could do that, I remember I used to like things, but I don't know what they are. So.
Oh, I feel like I've drugged this down.
You really did, Malia. You beat me up. This is your fault completely. So, I stalked you a little on Facebook, so I know who you are now.
Okay.
So we're all set.
I don't do a lot of Facebooking, but
doesn't matter.
There's some things there.
Enough pictures here. I can pull it together. I know what I'm looking at. You said you've talked a couple of times about volunteering and mentoring people and stuff like that. How long were you able to do that before you're like, why am I talking about diabetes in the 5 free seconds that I have?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I will tell you that I think I mentioned that when I filled out all the stuff that, like when I would listen to your podcast, like I travel for work, I'm in the car all the time. And so I would listen to the podcast all the time and I would feel like I was gaining this knowledge. And then at some point I was like, I have to take a diabetes break.
Sure. Yeah, today. Sure. Well, not from the podcast, Malia, but I understand what you're saying. Go ahead.
It was kind of like that when so we've been super involved with diabetes. My husband and I have, we've, helped to raise a lot of money. He's actually currently the president of the Kentucky chapter, the JDRF. And I served on the board but it was all by accident. At the time I worked for my family's business and JDRF would bring for an outreach event, they'd bring kids out to my family's business. They have like a pumpkin patch. And so I had worked with that group for years. With no connection. And I loved the guy that did the outreach. He was a type 1 himself. His mom was type 1. I knew his story before we ever even, had any real life experience with diabetes. And he called me one day and said, oh, I just need to plan my fall event for all the kids to come out. And so I like about started crying on the phone, and I said, well, I've, joined your group, your family. And he's not with the organization anymore, but he was so great at just reaching out just a little here and there, not an overwhelming amount, but he got us involved with more of the outreach stuff, not really of the fundraising. And then over time, about a year later, he said, I think it would be, we have this mentoring program and we have families. We try to connect you with kids, in around the same age. So I started doing that, and I did that for a couple of years, and we're still very close with those families. We still see them a couple times a year, and sometimes talk, through text messages or whatever. But so I did that for a couple of years, and I will tell you that right now where we are with that is we've given so much. Like we put on a walk, or we did a run actually, for about 8 years at that same family business. And it was all for, fundraising through JDRF. And we did that for years. And so now we've kind of reached the point where we're like, okay, we're going to let a younger family kind of take this over. So we did it for a while, and it's good. It's all for a great cause, but it can be really overwhelming.
Yeah. I mean, you described that you're already overwhelmed, and then you take on this thing, which is very kind, obviously. But I just thought, like, can't possibly do that forever, right?
No, no, you can't. And we had to say that to her. It was just this year that my husband and I sat down and we said, okay, we just can't keep this up. Like, it's just not good for us, but it was really good in the moment, like in all these years, for the kids to see, they know that we're fighting for all of our kids, probably know that we're fighting for them, right? We're advocating for them, doing all the things. But I think it was good for them to see, not just with JDRF, but other things that my husband and I would do to involve ourselves in helping other people.
Mm-hmm. I think that too. I'm waiting for it to pay me off.
Well, maybe it'll be paid off in the sense that our kids saw it and they'll do that too.
Well, listen, being serious, that's what I think it is. I think it's what I talked about earlier, is that they'll sort of elevate above where I am, and that'll be the new ground zero, right? That'll be the new starting point. And then, they'll do the same thing in the world somehow. It doesn't mean they're going to have kids or not have kids, just they'll put that back in somehow, or they'll go live a happy life. There's part of me that, it's funny, as much as I think, like, I hope my kids have kids and, like, keep this whole thing going, there's another part of me. It's like, maybe they should just stay single and just have fun. Like, some people have fun, right? Like, why am I the building block person and other people are the rave people? Like, how does that happen? You know what I'm saying? Malia, you know what I'm saying. Yeah, you're damn right you do.
Oh, I do.
Why am I trying so hard? And there are other people who are out at, I don't know.
Just living their best life.
Yeah, in a field somewhere, dancing in a circle on Molly. Like, why is that happening? Like, how is it possible that I'm the one carrying the water and they're the one drinking it? I don't know. I'm not bitter at all.
No, I'm good.
I don't know. In my personality, it's not like that. Like, I wouldn't have been able to, like, as a young person, just be like, I'm just going to be by myself and hang out, and I'll ride this thing to the end. I had an aunt and uncle that did it. They were married. They were like, we do not want kids. They did everything they wanted to do, and they still died. So, you know what I mean? What's the saying? None of us are getting out of this alive. I think that's the one, I don't know. Have we helped anybody so far with this conversation? Or do you think we just bummed out a bunch of people whose kids just got diagnosed with diabetes?
I know. I'm really feeling bad about that.
Listen, the truth is, you could go put on another episode of the podcast where I'm also speaking honestly about things. And I'll tell you that, do I need to remind them here, Malia? Arden's A1C has been between 5.2 and 6.2 for almost 10 years now. So, it's there's a lot of good stuff that comes out of it too, about the just sort of setting a course and sticking to it and having long-term perspective, not getting too bogged down moment to moment. But I don't know. Well, listen, it might not surprise you. I record this podcast like almost every day. Every day isn't great for me. You might have caught me on one of those days. But I also think it's valuable to be honest with people. Like, it's not.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too.
This thing is, I mean, honestly, that's what you were talking about with mentoring people, right? You said you didn't know how to, like, how do you do this? And then you decided to be honest with them. It's, this isn't great. It's not.
Yeah. It's sort of like, when we first had a baby and, the first 6 weeks we, never slept. And so like my husband said to me after, I don't know, a few months, he said, gosh, if somebody would have just told us in the beginning, hey, it gets better.
Right.
He's like, I feel like I would have gone through that first 6 weeks a little easier.
Yeah.
And I looked at that, like with mentoring families, I thought, you can ask all the tough questions and, I'm going to tell you might not sleep some nights and all the things, but it's not all doom and gloom. It really isn't.
Right.
And, we've done okay.
I believe everything I've ever said on the podcast for the most part. If you bring me something crazy I said back, I might say no to that. But it is really, it's time and experience, and you just sort of figure out what to do and you do it. And at the same time, people's kids are people. They're not like everybody doesn't grow up to be the CEO of some big shiny company. Like, right. Like all of our kids aren't going to be professional musicians or athletes or whatever it is you're hoping for. Exactly. As a matter of fact, for most people, that's not going to happen. So it's not, it's fun to expect it, but the truth is you do your best, you learn things, it gets easier. And, when you're really making problems, you course correct. Like when Malia didn't sleep for a while, she eventually said to herself, I need to stop doing this now. So that's it. That's the big stuff, right? I don't know.
That's the big stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Just pre-bolus, for God's sake.
I know.
That's all.
I'm really hoping we'll get there, and that's but I think it's just gonna take him deciding on his own. He's gonna take more of the initiative to be a good caregiver for himself.
What happens if you just climb up his butt and make it happen? Does that get pushed back?
I think, honestly, I think he would just rather us do it all the time.
Oh, I see. Have you
know what I mean?
Have you considered just taking it for a little while until they get to a different age?
Maybe that's what we should consider. But we were doing the opposite. He went into 6th grade last year. He's going into 7th grade this year. And so we were like, okay, this is when we were in elementary school, we had the most wonderful experience ever. Mm-hmm. And so we were always trying to prepare him for middle school where it would be a little different. And now Sophie's going to high school. So we're prepared. So there's all these different stages that we thought we were doing the right thing, by just preparing him to be more responsible and more independent, which they are independent, but they're not, right? Because they're not doing the things that they should be doing. So I don't know, maybe that would be the better thing to do right now.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I swear to you, I don't know. I wish I did. Like, the way I think of it is that they're kids and they're going to not be great at it, right?
Of course.
Why don't I prop them up for a little bit and hope we can get to a place where they take over?
I thought both of them kind of butt heads with the school nurse this past year. And I thought, this is good. I'm going to use this, And so they didn't want to be pulled out of class, which I don't want them to do either. And that was another nightmare. But they would say, she's just constantly standing over me. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, hey, we can fix this. We can fix it. I've got a simple solution. Don't let your blood sugar get out of range. Bolus for your food, and she will not come and find you.
Yeah. That seems easy, doesn't it? And then did it happen?
Yes and no. He would tell her, especially Wyatt, he would say, I'm independent. You don't have to do this. But then I would have to call her and say, hey, his blood sugar is 300. What is going on? And
she's like, hey, he's independent. He's independently screwing this up. So let's get going.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I love
And that's what would happen. He would eat lunch and just be like, oh, I didn't bolus. I forgot to. So
it might be one of the most common answers from a kid. They're like, I've got this. And you're like, no, obviously you don't. like all of the things that we measure this scenario with, you have not scored high on.
You failed.
Yes. And now you're going to tell me I've got this. Like, I don't know what that even means.
Obviously they don't either.
I think it means I'm going to ignore this and you should leave me alone. But, and I don't even just mean diabetes, like on anything, like cleaning their room or something. And you're like, hey, I'm having trouble walking in here. They're like, I've got it. I'm like, okay. What if
insert the eye roll that they give to parents?
What if you put that stuff in the closet? Then I wouldn't be tripping over it. And then, not for nothing, you'd have it. So, like, but it's just, it's crazy, isn't it? Like, isn't it? Aren't people weird?
They are very weird.
I don't think we're very far past being bugs, if I'm being perfectly honest. I saw some pictures the other day. Malia, here's how we'll end. Okay. New NASA photographs of space. If you felt small knowing that there were a certain number of planets in our galaxy, wait till you see pictures of other Milky Ways and things like that and realize that every little speck isn't a planet or a star. It's another, like, galaxy inside of another thing. I'm pretty sure we're literally like bugs that figured out how to talk. So
yes, probably so.
Yeah. There's part of me that thinks that we should just all take our clothes off and run around outside again. Like, just
some people do that.
Let's stop with these houses and this idea that we're evolved. Because when seriously, when you take one of these things, one of these people, right? And they seem reasonable. And you say to them, your job is to keep your room clean. And then the room's not clean. And you say, hey, your room's not clean. And they go, no, I got it.
Yeah, it's fine.
There's a real disconnect there. So maybe we should all just, I don't know. Let's give up. Let's all go to Bonnaroo together.
No, we don't want to give up. We don't want to give up.
I don't know, Malia. I'm telling you, I know this is going to happen. That there's going to be this moment. I'm going to take a big, deep breath. Then I'm going to get hit by a truck. I know it. I just know there's no payoff for me at the end. I'm living in the moment, Malia. That's all.
Sometimes that's not a bad place to be.
Not well. Let me just point out. Like, it's not, as you heard earlier, I can't imagine what I would do with free time. So I don't know. And that's my mistake too. I should be doing something with my free time. But I don't know. Like, so much happens around you. And as you get older, your parents start to get sick. And you, like, I just had like it's such a throwaway thing, but like, my meniscus was torn in my knee, which I think happens to every person my age at this point. And so, I'm going to get this fixed. I know a guy, I've got insurance, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like 8 weeks later and you're like, oh, I'm finishing up my rehab. And before you know it, you're like, well, there's like a third of the year is gone so that my knee doesn't hurt. And then it's, and then you're just like on to the next thing. Like, what's wrong with my mom? What does my brother need? What are the kids complaining about? Oh, it's a lake. Boring. Great.
Like, right.
Yeah. Kidding me. All right. What are we going to call this episode? Drown them in a lake? No, that would be wrong. We're not doing that.
It would be wrong, wouldn't it?
We're not doing that. Hit them with an oar? No, it's wrong too. Well, I'm glad you're sleeping.
I am sleeping. And we're actually on Omnipod 5, so we just started that, cool. And that's excellent. Helping some too.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I do want you to share with people. You didn't know how tired you were when you were tired, right? You needed hindsight to look back to see. Can you tell them how sleeping changed things for you?
Well, mental clarity. That is probably the biggest one. Mm-hmm. It's hard to process anything when you're exhausted, and it's hard to be a good person when you're exhausted.
Yeah.
I think I would overreact to everything. So just getting sleep helped me to process everything better. I was a better caregiver. I was a better wife. I was a better mother. I mean, I think on sleep, we don't realize how important that is. But once we could figure out how to do that, we were better.
It's one of the
everything.
It's one of the hallmarks of being the parent of a kid with type 1 is finding a way to sleep.
It's finding a way to sleep. Yeah. I hear that with other, people that are come on the podcast, and they'll say, I'm exhausted. I'm just exhausted. And, I think any parent in general can really relate to that. But I mean, if you're, a parent of a type 1, you really know what that means. Mm-hmm. It's hard.
Yeah. Do you think people listening are disappointed that I didn't make fun of Kentucky?
They might be. Listen, I travel for a living and visit a lot of different states, and the jokes on Kentucky are there are a lot of them.
Are they unfounded or no?
They're not.
I've been to Kentucky once. May I tell my Kentucky story here?
Oh, of course.
Okay. I went there for a wedding, and Kelly and I actually, to give a point like about what we're talking about here, is we decided to drive. And we could have flown. It would have been easy. And we're like, instead, let's carve out a couple of extra days and take it easy and drive. And I've told people before on the way back from that wedding, I said to her, I was like, this is the best time I've had in such a long time. Like, just because we were just not doing anything. You know what I mean? Like, Arden was somewhere with somebody, and, you know, we could watch her blood sugar well enough, and, you know, that kind of stuff. So we weren't thinking about that too much. Saw some old friends, which was really nice. But one morning, this is going to sound stupid. I've never been to a Waffle House before. And I've just seen them. And for anybody who hasn't seen one, it's I'm going to call it a restaurant, because that seems like the only way to like quantify what it is. But it looks like a place where you look at immediately and think, I shouldn't go in there.
Yes.
Right? Like,
that's a good description.
Yeah. You look and you go, it exists, and I see people in there, but I know that this is wrong. I know that this is bad. There's no way this is good. It's going to be scary. And, but there was this one morning, it was after the wedding, and Kelly and I didn't know where we were. And I was like, this is it, Kel. Let's go to Waffle House. Like, let's do it. You know what I mean? Like, this is going to be the time. She's looking at me sideways. She's like, I don't know, man. I think this is wrong. It's like, nah, it'll be all right. And so we walk inside. Every table in the place is covered, littered, actually, with old plates and food. There are 5 people working there, but they're not making any effort to clear the tables. And I look up, and the guy says, we're not seated anymore. It's takeout only.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, okay. And then I start thinking, like, well, they don't close for a long time. Like, what do you mean you're not? And then I just realized they don't want to clean off the tables. So you can't sit down. I was like, all right. I was like, well, I'll just order some. I said to Kelly, I'm like, should we eat in the car? And she's like, we should leave. And I was like, no, I think you're right. But like, we're here now. We're inside. And so we order the stuff and pay for it. The guy hands it to me in a bag, and I look in the bag, and I'm like, there's no silverware in here. Like, there's no like plastic knives and forks. And he goes, yeah, we don't have those. I was like, I'm sorry, what? And he goes, yeah, we don't have. I said, but you told me I got to go outside and eat. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, but how am I? It's a waffle. Like, what am I going to do? And he just stared at me. And he's staring at me, and I'm staring at him. And I'm like, in Kentucky. You know, like is what I'm thinking, right? And so I don't know.
We do use silverware here, just so you know.
You say. And so so I'm sitting there, and I'm like, hold on one second, I'm sorry. Sorry, Emily, I had to clear my throat. So I'm at a loss. I'm holding $25 worth of waffles and other sorts of things. I have nowhere to go with them. And I said, could I take some silverware from the restaurant and I'll bring it back? And he goes, yeah. And he pulls 2 forks and 2 knives, and he reaches out to me, and I said, all right, great. I said, I'm just eating in my car. I'll be back with him in a little bit. And you know what he said? You don't have to bring it back. Just throw it away. And I said, but I'm just 20 feet from the door. So when I'm done with it, I could probably bring it back to you. You know, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring it back to you. He goes, you don't have to. And I was like, okay. So I went out. We open up the styrofoam. I mean, even as you see the styrofoam, you're like, what are we doing? This is ridiculous. It's the worst waffle I've ever seen in my life.
It's not great food. It really isn't.
How in God's name does a place called Waffle House not produce a decent waffle?
That's, I've never really thought about that, but they really should work on that.
Thin, like the sole of an old sneaker. Okay. Moist, not airy and crispy. Everything was bad. The sides, the whole thing. My wife and I are looking at each other like, well, she had the upper hand at that point, because she's like, well, this is your fault. because you wanted to do this. So we finished all up, and I collected up the garbage, and I dropped it in a trash can, and I took the silverware back in, and I walked in, and there are 4 people behind the counter, and I walked in, and I'm standing there, and they just don't acknowledge my existence. One of them's looking at me, but not saying anything. And so I stood there for a second because I don't know, am I polite? I just thought they might have something on their mind or they're doing something. It took me a minute to realize there's nothing on their minds and they're doing nothing and still haven't cleaned off any of these tables. And so I held it up in the air and I went, I have your silverware. And one guy walked past me when I said it. And then finally a girl came over and she's like, oh, thank you. And she took it from me. And anyway, I don't know if that's a Kentucky story or a Waffle House story, but
probably, well, maybe a little of both. But there are some great things here too.
Listen, a lot of it was lovely. A lot of the trip was really lovely. My Waffle House experience aside.
That's not a place that we frequent.
No,
so.
I knew it was wrong, Malia. You understand that, right? Like, it's not like,
yes.
But I just had it in my head. I was like, Waffle House.
You got to experience it though. So,
well, I have the experience now. I know not to do it. As a matter of fact, if Waffle House called right now and said, I want to be a sponsor, I'd say, I'm sorry. You cannot do
this
that.
is not going to work out.
Yeah. There's nothing good I could say about Waffle House. I don't even know what to say. It was crazy. It was insane. And the entire time we were eating the food, just for context, there was someone cutting the lawn in front of us. Very slowly. And I don't know why they were moving so slowly on this tractor, but it was just, I don't know, it was insane. There was garbage on the ground and Malia.
There are some lovely parts of the state.
Yeah. Well, we got the hell out of there right after that. So the wedding was wonderful, honestly. And seeing the people was terrific. And they like had a barn wedding on all this property. It was very cool. Like the whole thing was really great. Aside from the Waffle House, but okay. All right. I didn't hear you stick up too much for Kentucky just then, so I'm going to let it go.
It is a great place, but you will find some very unusual things also. So,
did you grow up there?
I did. Yeah,
okay.
I did.
Nice. That's lovely.
But it's so funny because I travel, I'm all over the country, with my job, and I'll do a lot of work in Indiana. So just, an hour away, and people will hear me talk and they'll say, where are you from?
Really?
I'm like, an hour from you.
You don't have much of an accent, in my opinion.
Oh, thank you. I actually get that a lot with people tell me I have an accent.
I mean, you do, but it's not thick or harsh or so colloquial that I don't know what you're talking about or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Good. That's good to know.
Yeah. Good for you. Look at you representing Indiana. I like how you're like, I'm all over the country. I sometimes go as far as Indiana.
Well, I just was making the reference that I go just an hour away, and they say,
"You sound so
Where
far.
are you from?"
Yeah. Hey, how often do you get to see the ocean when you're from the middle of the country?
We make an effort.
Okay.
Yeah, we make an effort. We go, a couple of times a year.
Which way do you go? South?
South.
Okay.
Yes, usually.
So like Texas to that.
No, Texas. No.
Don't they have an ocean?
We don't go to Texas. That's just too far for us. We usually go to like
Florida.
Destin,
Where?
Panhandle.
Oh, okay.
To like Destin, like Florida. That's 10 hours.
I don't know where anything is. Like when you said like you go to another state, I was like, I don't know where that is.
We're at least 8 hours away from any ocean.
By car.
By car.
Okay.
Yes. So that's why we go to the lake a lot. That's what we do. We just find inland water.
So your kids can complain about it. Do they complain about the ocean too, by the way?
They'll find something to complain about, I'm sure.
Well, at least you're not exhausted anymore. So you're not going to snap and leave them there or something.
Maybe not. I don't think so.
They're staring at the ocean. You just look at your
We're
husband.
too close to the end now, right? Like at this point, we're getting close.
Wow. Yeah.
13 and 14.
Oh God, you have no idea. It's not even half over yet. Good luck.
I was trying to end it on a positive note. I feel like I've really drug it down.
Yeah. No. I think you've made listen, I've enjoyed this conversation. So, but anyway, I appreciate you coming on very much.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed this.
Cool. I'm glad. Hold on one second. Okay. Let's start off by thanking Malia for coming on the show and sharing that terrific story with us. And we're going to thank CozyEarth.com and remind you to use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout to save 35% on your joggers, your sheets, your towels, whatever. What the fuck is this? Don't forget, you can get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com when you use my link, BetterHelp.com/juicebox. And you can take that survey at t1dexchange.org/juicebox. Right now, take you 10 minutes. Help everybody. Help yourself. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. If you're looking for community around your diabetes, please check out the Facebook group Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. It has 35,000 people in it, I think. It grows so much it's hard to keep track of. People with type 1, type 2, LADA, parents, caregivers, adults. It's a really complete and lovely place. You should check it out.